Go, it's your old pal Emac coming to you with one Kyle Dvorchak as we get ready for the NFL Live Before Lock Week 14. It's Sunday Night Football. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Buffalo Bills. A little bit chilly out there in Buffalo, but no surprise for the Steelers who play outside as well. Kyle, we had an exciting day earlier. There's a new quarterback, a new sheriff in town in Philadelphia. Are they turning things around? Are they back in the AFC East? Oh, slow down. We've got the Washington football team that looks like they might be stealing one on the road here. They're trying to do revenge for Alex Smith, who I see is not in the game anymore. What's the good word here? Oh, and it's Dehember. Derrick Henry said, you know what? The calendar flipped. I was a little late, but let me get you 200 yards here. What do you want to unpack from these early games as we allow everybody to assemble?
Yeah, I mean, it's Dehember, and this is just what we do when it's Dehember, is that we lose money saying what he's doing is unsustainable, and his projection is like, even if it is 20 carries, it's also 2 targets. So when you can get, 18 carries and 6 targets with someone else, you take them. And then you take those carries and those targets, these Zoomer targets, and Derrick Henry punches you in the teeth. And, you wake up and you do it again next Sunday.
Yeah, this one is just it's a surprise, but it shouldn't be a surprise. We should be used to this by now, but here we are. All right, we'll give everybody another moment or two to get on in here, but I want to remind everybody we are sponsored by No House Advantage. We'll talk about them in a little bit. We've got some free content today. Let me get, if Nightbot hasn't gotten it to you already, let me get you that. Today's free content is the Awesemo NFL DFS Rankings. You can sort them for the 2 games that are left and get the individual player rankings there. Now, what Alex does is these are coming straight out of his model. What he does is he provides those a player projection grade as well as a value grade, and he's got those for FanDuel and DraftKings. So you definitely want to check that out. It's just another way to help you create a player pool tier. A lot of us, of course, inherently already know what we more or less want to do with the NFL, but these are very helpful for some of those other sports where you're bouncing in and out of, such as NASCAR and golf in particular, where there's a huge field and there's, every week 20 or 30% of the field didn't play the last week, and they may play every other event or 2 out of every 3, etc. So these are kind of helpful to organize them. They're also very good for hockey. We break these out for our hockey lines as well, and that is something that's very helpful because I don't watch a lot of hockey, Kyle, but I play it. This will be my second year of playing NHL every single day. Started with the playoffs 2 years ago, and it has become one of my little profitable sports here, purely off the Awesemo projections. So you gotta love that. All right, let's talk about some fun here. Let me get back over to my notes. Key things that we have to worry about tonight. Not a lot, except for the fact that the Steelers are playing, I believe this is their 3rd game in 12. I can't remember, it's 12 or 11, depending on how you kind of want to finesse and count and whatever. They didn't really have a bye week. They've had that Thanksgiving game got postponed a couple times. So technically, even though they were prepping to do a game every couple days, that never happened. Here we are. Big Ben getting a little older, and they are no longer undefeated. Washington got them. Who knows? Maybe Washington is for real at this point. Well, as real as you can be in the NFC East. But this is an interesting one. So looking at the macro level here, that's a lot of games in a short amount of time. We're going to have James Conner coming back. Oh, I forgot to pull the inactives. Let me go do that. We've got James Conner coming back. He's missed a couple weeks. He did have COVID, but we've just seen no running game whatsoever from the Steelers. So they're going to be content to pass. Ben, no longer the razor sharp quarterback that he once was. What is he, 37 or 38 now? This is his 20th season in the NFL. This is pretty wild. When he was a rookie, Josh Allen was either in 1st or 2nd grade, depending on what school he went to. But yeah, pretty crazy here. I point all this out because the interesting thing about Roethlisberger is he's not as accurate as he once was, but there's a very, very, very good chance he's going to approach 50 pass attempts today. He's gone 46 above for his last 4 games, 46 or more. What do you want to do with Ben Roethlisberger? For starters here, yes, we want to play him, but he's getting up there. Buffalo, little frisky on defense. How do you want to approach this? Because he, in my opinion, is the linchpin for the entire Steelers offense, and that's a lot to ask for one guy.
I think for me, because as we'll talk about, when we talk about the other side of the ball, I'm making some cost saving decisions on the other side of the ball, whereas it'll be in the captain spot. So I'm not as pressed for salary as the people, say maybe playing one Josh Allen at captain. Maybe that's the decision we'll be making. So I'm not as pressed for salary. I have a little bit more money to go around. I'm playing some cheaper guys, at least relatively cheaper than the quarterbacks at my captain spot. So I'm still trying to get Ben Roethlisberger in wherever I can. I think if you're looking at which quarterback do you play, it's kind of no contest. You're still playing Josh Allen. But if you have the salary, there's not like a ton of reason other than differentiation to not play both quarterbacks. And like you said, this team right now, when their game is within 7, either way, winning or losing, they're passing at a 64% rate. That was tied with, I believe it would probably be like the Bears, or actually the Bengals. They're tied with the Bengals as the most pass heavy teams in neutral game script. They just do not care about running the football. And one, we know that passing is the optimal way to move the football. And two, Ben Roethlisberger isn't bad. He's probably not like he was in his prime, but when you have one of the best trios of receivers in the league, it makes sense what they're doing. I don't think there's any reason to expect them to deviate. Like, I know we're always working with small samples, but as far as the information we have to go with, they're going to keep doing that this week, especially in a game where I think the line opened as like a pick 'em. And now they're, as a few hours ago, it's like a 2.5 spread. So if they're underdogs, like there's no reason to not expect that he won't attempt 40 plus. And like you said, I think 50 is very much within the range of outcomes. And it's really just picking who do you think that funnels to? Does that funnel to a lot of them? Does it funnel to 4 different guys and only one of them makes the optimal, or maybe 2 of them make the optimal? Or is it 2, 3? Like how narrow can the target tree go in a single game? And I think that's really going to be not only Ben Roethlisberger as the linchpin, but what do you do with his receivers? Because on the other side, things are not set in stone, but there's 1 or 2 decisions you have to make really.
Yeah, so this one's kind of an interesting one. We'll talk cash games and main lineups and such as we continue breaking these down. I did pull up the inactives here. That is Joe Hayden, who's out with a concussion for the Steelers. It's their cornerback. Anthony McFarland is out, and that's really it for the offense. So that means Jalen Samuels is active. From the Buffalo side, the only key guys are TJ Yeldon and Tyler Kroft. That should be no surprise. Yeldon's only played in like 3 games this year, and Kroft not that many more. So no real surprises there. We're not really looking at anybody with regards to injury other than James Conner coming back from the COVID, about his bout with COVID. So let's see here. Why in the world is that showing up? Okay. So the running back spot. So the Pittsburgh running backs have just been, like an absolute disaster. An unmitigated disaster. It's been very, very disappointing. So is this a function of poor line play? Is it the play calling? Is it one of those seasons where it's just not quite working? Because usually that's a hallmark of what they do. And they've got the same running backs that they've had for a few years, save for obviously, since the Le'Veon Bell holdout. But they really just have not done much of anything. Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland last week, disappointing. Jalen Samuels has been healthy and active several times. He's also been dealing with hip and calf and quad issues throughout the season. I don't really like any of these guys. I am going to be under the field on all of them. I will be shocked if I have more than 5 or 10% of Connor, maybe a little Samuels, just for the leverage play in the event something happens to Connor. But then we're still counting on Jalen Samuels to do something right, and we haven't really seen that for quite some time. This feels like a whole void. Do you want to play any running backs from either side? I'm audibling here.
Yeah, they're not very good. I mean, both teams, I talked about it with Pittsburgh, both teams are bottom 4 in running back rush attempts. The Bills don't come in as like they come in with a little bit of, like, when you just look at their high level stats, a team that runs a tiny bit. A lot of that is Josh Allen. When you just focus on their running backs, I believe they are what would be 32nd minus 3 is 29th or whatever. They're 29th in running back rush attempts per game. Pittsburgh 30th or 28th. They're both right in that range where they just don't want to run with their running backs. I think the only thing you can point to is that both sides, Pittsburgh especially, vaguely the Bills, have the potential to condense their running back carries to one specific player. The Bills haven't really done it this year up until last week. And I believe I was watching that game. I believe it was because there was basically like a miscommunication or kind of a muff on the handoff from Josh Allen to Zach Moss. And it was in their own end zone. And I think the 49ers scored right after that, obviously, because they coughed the ball up. And I don't know how much we saw of him through the rest of the game. And Devin Singletary completely took over. And like Devin Singletary has been a guy who's been efficient when given opportunities. He does like fumble a lot, though, just like for the reason Zach Moss got benched. And that's why I think we see very little of him. Both, he's kind of a meh pass catcher and he fumbles a lot, or at least he has throughout his time in Buffalo. So that's probably the reason he doesn't get a lot of red zone work. If that flips and we see, a 70%, 80% market share in an individual game from him as the favorite on a team that could score a lot, he's a super interesting leverage play. That doesn't mean I like him in the median. I just think in large field tournaments, you can go to it. Pittsburgh as the underdog. I know they're probably even the team that is more likely to condense their running back touches to one player because we have like a 1 game sample of Devin Singletary getting that role. We have pretty much the whole season whenever he's healthy of James Conner carrying the bulk of the load. But as an underdog on a team that is probably the most apt to pass the ball when the game is close, and now that it be less close than it's been essentially up until every game until last week, because they hadn't lost until last week, in a spot where they could actually lose and they're projected to lose, what do we think they rushed? 10, 15 times with James Conner? I get why you would go to it. It'll be contrarian. You have the potential to lock up a lot of volume. Pittsburgh is a good offense. I think I would just rather make that argument for Devin Singletary, though.
Okay. That's the one. So I went back and forth on them. Let's actually jump to them because this is pertinent here, and it's a little outside of our norm. Let me get up to my notes for them. A reminder, we do have a really good deal. I saw NetBot just dropped this. We are offering with the promo code Caruso, as in Alex Caruso. No, not Alex Baker, Alex Caruso, the Lakers guard. $1 for 1 week of NBA premium content to start the season. You also get all of our preseason stuff. So right now we have the player pool and such, and you get Adam Scherer and you get Greg, Nerdass Greg, in the Slack chat breaking stuff down, talking about the different things as the later starting lineups come out. So you'll want to check that out. But you can come in, get all the good stuff for a whole week just for $1. This is for new members only, but the promo code is Caruso. Definitely check that out. All right. I was so excited I closed the wrong window. So let's get back to Buffalo running backs. So this is the harder part. So I said they've essentially split everything down the middle for the last 5 weeks heading into Monday night's game. We saw Zach Moss play just 11 snaps. He fumbled in the shadow of the Buffalo goalpost in the first quarter. So Devin Singletary got 85% of the snaps, by far a season high, most he's played since his rookie year. So the Steelers, they've got the number 1 passing DVOA. They've got the number 3 rushing DVOA. They lead the league in sacks. They lead the league in takeaways. This is a tough matchup here. They've got phenomenal linebackers. They've got, which Watt brother is the best? I don't know, but you've got TJ Watt that has been phenomenal. Right. Yeah. TJ Watt. Derek Watt's also on the team. I get confused every now and then.
I know.
But he's been TJ. What's the other Watt? The original Watt?
JJ, and JJ. Derek's the fullback.
Thank you. God, come on, folks. Mom and Dad watch? Couldn't you
line up JJ?
Can you imagine the grocery bill? Yeah, can you imagine the grocery bill?
Yeah, but they used to line up JJ as a tight end and a fullback once every 5 weeks, and he just did what Derek could never do. Like he was even better in that role, which has got to be like emasculating for Derek to see TJ go out or to see JJ go out from like the running back position and punch one in. You're like, I've only ever wanted to do that once in my life because I assume he doesn't have a touchdown. And, they don't do that anymore though.
Yeah. So anyway, on DraftKings makes it a little easier for us. I wanted to go with Singletary. So a long story short, basically everything was leaning towards Moss until the last game. That doesn't mean it's not going to go right back to it. We don't know what's going to happen for sure. It could be kind of a hot hand situation. And even if it's a hot hand situation, it's an impossible matchup. So now you're probably going to be sharing it. And because it's an impossible matchup, either guy could screw up and get yanked for the other guy, right? So we've already seen that happen as recently as Monday night. So on DraftKings, you get the $1,000 discount on Moss. So I kind of lean that way there. On FanDuel, they're both 11,500. I'd rather play Singletary in either of these situations here, even though Singletary was kind of taking a little bit less of the production. in that 5-week stretch, I still trust Singletary, and I want to believe in him a little more than Zach Moss. But the problem is they're basically carbon copies of each other. So even the pricing there is not the most amazing discount. So anyway, that's those guys there. The wide receivers. So let's circle back here to Pittsburgh. So the Pittsburgh. Oh, remember when we used to have Big Ben home road splits?
Dude,
And it was a thing. Did
like
you
of
know?
all quarterbacks too, where like typically like when like Matt Ryan leaves like or like Drew Brees who's 40 and leaves a dome to go play a game in like Buffalo, like I don't believe it, but like at least that is a logical argument that makes sense. Ben Roethlisberger plays in like the middle of the like grossest Midwest like stadiums. He's playing in these crap rain and weather games. They're like, oh, he has to go play indoors in Houston. What is he gonna do? He's probably in love whenever he goes to like gets to play on the road. This isn't, that case, but it's no different,
Yeah. So 115 games at home, 115 games on the road during his career. He's 86-29 at home. Okay, that makes sense, right? Home field advantage. 70-44 on the road. That's a pretty good record in and of itself.
Really good.
One tie. His completions, 1/10 more per game at home. His attempts, 3/10 more on the road. His yards, 9 more at home. The only difference he has is 0.4 touchdowns more and 0.2 interceptions less. Now you're saying, okay, well, that's over his entire career. I went and looked at it just for this year. It's even closer. So yes, there was a time where it absolutely seemed like he was better on the road. As Kyle kind of pointed out, a lot of that had to do with better conditions. Where was the weather, et cetera? And DFS people needed something to talk about. But I thought that was kind of interesting that we could sort of put that to bed. Now, so he's kind of playing everything even. You know what he also does? Plays everything pretty even with his receivers. Do we know who his favorite is? We think it's Diontae Johnson. However, if we go, and I just dropped the link, I'll drop it again to my article where I break down the targets and play counts and some of the other snap counts for some of these positions here, so you can see it. So Diontae Johnson since week 9, 62 targets. That's almost 20 more than anybody else. Juju Smith-Schuster, 44. He had a bad first 5 weeks where he had 24 targets. That's in the past. He's been basically the number 2 most targeted guy. You have Chase Claypool also with 44. However, Claypool fell off the shelf last week. Were they doing something different with James Washington? Claypool only played on about 60% of the snaps. What do we do? Washington played more, but saw his normal 3 or 4 targets. So nothing special there. He did catch one for a touchdown, but nothing overly special there. And then you got Eric Ebron, and we know throughout his career, Ben Roethlisberger has targeted tight ends. Ebron's had 11 targets in each of the last 2 games. Point being, there's a lot of targets going around, but no one is dominating the others, especially if you just look at a 2-game sample size, even a 3-game sample size. You have to go all the way out to that 5-game sample size before Diontae Johnson really pulls ahead. I want to play Diontae Johnson, but these other guys come at a discount. How are you parsing this out, especially on the full PPR where it makes a huge difference on DraftKings, because here is where our fantasy performance or fantasy production is going to come from.
Yeah, I think you said the thing that I is maybe most important is that we're going to see probably the most air yards over the past 5 weeks. We've seen by far the most air yards go to Chase Claypool, but on DraftKings scoring, where a 10 reception game from Diontae Johnson, like that dwarfs any sort of yardage production we're going to see from someone like Chase Claypool, assuming he doesn't go for like 150. Obviously, if he goes for 150, he could do it on 2 catches. Who cares? But given that that's probably not likely, the overall target volume for Diontae Johnson has been unreal. Like he is right now leading the team in target share over the past 5 weeks by a handful of percentage points. But what's most important is like he's catching a decent amount of them because they're lower ADOT, but he's not like Juju Smith-Schuster where he offers you no like yardage upside on an individual target level. So I think he exists at like the apex of fantasy production for all 3 of these guys, where he's going to catch a ton of passes. He still has 100-yard bonus equity, which like it really seems difficult for Juju Smith-Schuster at 100 yards, just given his ADOT is like that peak Jarvis Landry ADOT. Honestly, it's like peak David Johnson ADOT. Like the best running backs have similar ADOTs. That's not quite true. David Johnson's 1 year with a high ADOT was like one of the greatest outlier seasons ever. So good for him doing that. But Juju Smith-Schuster, it doesn't look good. He looks like Jarvis Landry, and not like good Jarvis Landry. It's like the worst version of Jarvis Landry possible. Diontae Johnson is.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, it's just it's crazy to see, because remember, he was Mr. Efficiency when he had Antonio Brown just taking everything away. He was getting those 60-yard touchdowns, and they'd forget about him and whatever in his rookie year and his second year. That he's still fine, but you're right. He's absolutely morphed what he's been doing. Or maybe that was just the outlier, and we saw a stretch of games where you're thinking, this guy could be Calvin Johnson by the time, or Jerry Rice by the time it's all said and done. And here, while it feels like he's regressed, has he really though?
Yeah, no, we've got like the past 2 seasons of data say that at worst he's just like, I still think at the past 2 seasons of data say he's good, but like he's good at drawing targets. He's not good at producing 100-yard games, whereas the first 2 seasons of data on him were the exact opposite, where like he wasn't going to beat out Antonio Brown for targets, but he could produce monster games. And yeah, exactly. I don't know what the answer is. If those first 2 seasons, like the Antonio Brown factor, the peak Ben Roethlisberger factor, I think one of those was a 5,000-yard season from Ben Roethlisberger. Like those factors were so strong that it pushed us away from what the real Juju Smith-Schuster is, which is what these 2 years are actually showing us, is that he's just, he draws targets, but he's just not going to produce crazy games on those targets. And that's fine. That's probably even like decent for an NFL team, because even at his like pretty abysmal yards per target, it's still like vastly more efficient than running the football or anything. So which one is the truth? I don't have a good read. I'm going to say, at least right now, I'm going to lean on like the more recent seasons of data saying what he's doing right now is the truth for now. If Deontay Johnson like went out and got hurt, as he tends to do, maybe they would use Juju Smith-Schuster in that kind of role. But as long as we're not projecting that, I think Juju's upside just seems so difficult to find. And Chase Claypool is really weird because, like you said, we saw more snaps from James Washington last week, and that's kind of been, maybe not more snaps, hasn't been the thing that's been going on all year, but they aren't really ever using Chase Claypool as an every down player, which is like, you look at the guy and you say, how is he not only your every down player, but your most targeted player in any given week? I think, as always, like our ownership projection has actually like come pretty far back down to earth on Chase Claypool. For that reason, I think I don't love him, but I think he's a good play. I think it was when he was coming off of like these multi-touchdown games, that's when it was really difficult. You're saying he's not playing a ton of snaps. He's producing at such a high rate because of his touchdowns. I don't really want to play him. I'm fine at betting on that like spiky touchdown upside. Like I believe some players do have like a natural ability slightly to score more touchdowns than the average player. It's a slight, it's slight. And the data we have on Chase Claypool is simply not enough to make any definitive statement. But the field seems to think that there's just no way he can have a monster game anymore. Our top like Showdown play tool has his captain ownership at, what are we looking at here? It's like, man, it's the same as James Washington. Why would you, like, I get the price difference, but like at 1% ownership at captain, I think Chase Claypool is like a really good large field tournament play, because the field doesn't think that. If the field was playing him at a 10% rate and he was coming off a multi-touchdown game where he ran 15 routes, there'd be no reason to play him. It just wouldn't, the math wouldn't make sense. But we know he has a spiky upside, and that's really like all you can look for in a 1% play.
All right. Shout out to my Australian friends. We're doing a live draft via Facebook. It's a live slow draft, but a couple of us are in the US for basketball. The rest of them are in Australia, and it's my turn. I'm like, guys, I'm on air. I'm sorry. I know you guys are just getting up. I'm going to be going to bed soon. I'll make my pick after the show, but a couple of them just said, hey, we're watching. So thanks, guys. Appreciate that. And I will make my pick. I have my list ready, so it won't take me long. But in the meantime, there we go. Tisn't technology, Grant. So we kind of hit on tight ends a little bit there with Eric Ebron. Again, 11 targets in each of the last 2 games. Vance McDonald has 11 on the year. With Claypool, I thought, hey, they need a dynamic guy, right? Perhaps they maybe give him some handoffs or have him work out of the backfield. Do you know in his last 7 games, he's only had 3 handoff touches and none in the last, either 3 or 4. Just closed his game log. So his 2 back-to-back weeks where he had touchdowns was, I believe it was week 5 and 6. That was a long time ago. I was hoping we could maybe spin something. It's a showdown slate, leave no stone unturned, but we really haven't seen that from them. I don't know why they would change that at this point, especially with Connor coming back. But that was one of my thoughts. And then defense. So Blitzburg, aptly for their name, leading the league in turnovers and sacks. Buffalo is 12th in the league with 17 turnovers, and the Bills are allowing 2 sacks per game. So yes, we can play the Steelers defense here. Let's talk about Josh Allen, but we're going to do it by talking about No House Advantage. So No House Advantage is our sponsor. If you guys have not been over there yet, what are you waiting for? You got to go check that out. But we do have free projections for their site. So basically what they are is player props. But here's the twist. We're not going against the house. Therefore, there's no house advantage. This is peer-to-peer competition, just like DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo, etc. We're playing against each other's. We have about 25 to 40 questions, depending on the slate sport contest that they're doing. And what you do is you choose 5 of these, and then you rank them with confidence points, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, on the likelihood of whether you think they're going to happen or not. So tonight, Josh Allen's projection for passing yards, Kyle, 241 and a half. The Awesemo projections have him for 295.76. The median projection, running the many Monte Carlo simulations, is 280.97. So clearly, we're looking at the over here. Now, a lot of things can go wrong. We are going against the number 1 defense, but that's factored in the line of 241 and a half. Would you like to go over or under on that?
Yeah, this line seems like really factoring in that defense. Like, the defense is good. I get it. They're probably the best. I mean, I don't think there's really much of a conversation given their sack totals, their turnover totals. They kind of have to be the best in the NFL. But we see this time and time again. Like, the best quarterbacks in the league can consistently take advantage of the best defenses in the league. Like, even Miami got to Patrick Mahomes today, like, consistently. Patrick Mahomes did not have a good day. It just didn't show up in his yardage total. It didn't show up in his fantasy points for the most part. I feel the same way about Josh Allen. Like, I think if he has a bad day, he's probably throwing 40 plus times because, like Pittsburgh, they're a team that when they're at a deficit and when they're playing at neutral, which is most important, is when they're in neutral game script, they love to pass the football. So if they get down, I think we can easily project them to be one of the pass heaviest teams while playing from a deficit. That means Josh Allen's kind of insulated. If he really has to play horribly to not get, it's a decent line. Like 240 is not a nothing number. But to not get there, given his season-long averages, given what we have him projected for, would be standard deviations away from what we can expect from him. It's too far. Like, we should project him to play worse against this good of a defense. Not that much worse. Come on.
All right. And to finish that thought, No House Advantage, use the promo code Awesemo when you make your first deposit. They will match you up to $20. Refer a friend and get $5 when they make their first deposit. No House Advantage. Play against your friends, not the house. There we go. All right. So for back to the Josh Allen. So we like the over 241. How many 300-yard passers have the Steelers allowed this season?
It's got to be. Is it even one?
Trick question. It is nobody. Who got the closest? Why, that was Alex Smith, of course, with 296 yards last week. So yeah, a little bit tough, but they have had half of the opposing quarterbacks have had 1 or fewer touchdowns against the Steelers. So that's pretty good. We saw Josh Allen just shred the San Francisco 49ers last week. And the 49ers have a good, even though they've had a lot of people hurt this year, they've got their teams. Here's a little alliteration. Their team scheme is down, and they've been able to put guys in, and everybody kind of knows their role and their place. And it's a bend, don't break kind of thing. He just toasted them. I mean, Cole Beasley had a phenomenal game. We got Gabriel Davis, in the mix as well. Random insert touchdown or tight end for a touchdown play here. I mean, just it was the phenomenal quintessential chef's kiss Josh Allen game here. Tough matchup, but I want him to be my captain tonight. If I'm making just one lineup, I'm going to go that route. How are you feeling with that? You had mentioned you're going a little cheaper, especially on DraftKings where we have the 1.5 scoring, but you have to pay the tax of 1.5 on the salary. FanDuel, a little bit different story. I would prefer Allen as my number 1 guy, but there's no salary component there that changes that up.
Yeah, exactly. On FanDuel, where you're not essentially penalized for playing the good players at MVP, it becomes much more difficult to actually make these contrarian pivots because you don't, it's just less of a decision to make. Like, it's just saying who's going to score more, essentially, whereas you do have to adjust who's going to score more based on their salary on DraftKings, at least to an extent, So for that reason, most of the slates, honestly, most of these slates, I'll just come on and say, unless there's some strange circumstance we're seeing, like what I'd call incorrect ownership on a quarterback, I'm typically going to be fading them at captain. I think there are some slates, especially with quarterbacks that are very run heavy, or Lamar Jackson's, Kyler Murray's. We get like a Taysom Hill showdown slate. I'm sure he fits that bill there, where I think they have so much equity on the ground that their offense can kind of flounder and they can still get there. Josh Allen is a good runner, but he's not really going to threaten for probably even 50 yards or more on most slates. It's mostly that he punches in a touchdown every few weeks, rushes for 20 or so yards. It's kind of like Russell Wilson that way. And it's probably also because he doesn't have to be. He's passing so well that it simply doesn't matter. Like, why would you, even if you're a good runner, why would you? You're throwing to Stephon Diggs and you're throwing him dimes. So for that reason, I'm fine. I'm comfortable fading him at captain when we know he's going to be owned by possibly a quarter of the field, if not more. And the most important thing is that it's difficult to fade someone like Ben Roethlisberger if there wasn't a great like cast of players to choose from elsewhere, because Ben Roethlisberger can throw a touchdown to 4 different players. I know Josh Allen has kind of done that at times, but the yardage always funnels to one of like 2 to 3 players. If he's going to go for 300 yards, there's an incredible likelihood that mostly Stephon Diggs, but also Cole Beasley, who's played really well, that one of those guys goes for 100 yards. So really all you need is the touchdown at that point to make 100 yards on 7 catches and a touchdown from Cole Beasley as good, if not a better play at captain. And given the kind of narrow target tree outside of the random touchdowns, given the narrow target tree on the Buffalo side of things, I think anytime I think about playing Josh Allen, I'm just like, well, why am I not playing Stephon Diggs? Why am I not playing Cole Beasley? I don't even think Cole Beasley is like such a great play, but I think if, like I said, if we get a big game from Allen, there's a decent chance Cole Beasley beats him. And if he doesn't beat him straight up, it's a points per dollar thing. And I think our top showdown play shows this too. Like, we don't have Allen as like an egregious play. We have him almost exactly in line. His odds being the top scorer with the odds or with his ownership, which is just like a way of saying that's what people think his odds of being the top scorer are. He's slightly disadvantaged in terms of his odds being top scorer versus ownership. Stephon Diggs is less than half as popular at captain as our projections think his odds of being the best scoring player on the slate are. It's not that Allen is bad. It's that Diggs is just really good at captain. And Cole Beasley is not bad at captain. We have a small advantage on him as well. So I think that our projections and the way we're modeling these things kind of back up what I'm saying. I like Allen a lot. I just like him in the flex because he's got Stephon Diggs.
All right. Now my Australian friends are requesting that they wish they would have known I was doing this earlier when they were setting their lineups for their fantasy football championship. It's great. It's funny with guys that are on a completely opposite time zone as you, because they're watching the games just like we are. It's kind of funny, but they get them at work, especially for NBA. So, all right. Not much to add there. You did a good job of breaking all that stuff down. Let's cruise through here. So the Cole Beasley conundrum is where we are. I'm playing him quite a bit tonight. He's probably going to be my number 1 owned player. I don't think I'm not doing this from a point chasing thing. He has an entirely different role now with Buffalo than what he's had previously with Dallas, etc. He's kind of functioning a little bit more, not as the tight end, but getting some of those flat routes, etc. He's kind of getting the routes that normally would go to a pass catching back. He just has a great connection here with Josh Allen. So this is not the same Cole Beasley that was playing for Dallas for us. Gabriel Davis, solid, but we're counting on him getting lightning in a bottle yet again. I believe he scored in 3 of his last 4 games, which is pretty crazy. However, he's averaging just 4 targets in each of his last 4 games. So we've seen the positive things go his way. He could easily be twice the cost of James Washington for the same result. So we want to be careful there. And then Isaiah Mckenzie, we joked a little bit about him before the show with producer Tyler here. What do you want to do? He's in there for 8 to 15 snaps. We're going to project him for about 3 DK points. Do you want that sort of salary relief? How many lineups are you building before you get to him? 50-ish, perhaps? For perspective for people.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. It's like every player, like if you built an infinite amount of lineups, you would try and you would at some point exhaust all of the options, but you would prioritize the best lineups. And in this case, I think in large field tournaments, the best lineups aren't just like the best points per dollar lineups, they're also the best leverage lineups. I don't think he's a great play, so it would take probably 50 or so. I think if I was building 150 lineups, I would have a small percentage allocated to someone like Mckenzie, because I think it's like the perfect example of like who was it? Was the Ravens, Miles Boykin, where like sure, Miles Boykin is far less likely. Like even that game, we had very imperfect information to work with. It seemed like he was much less likely to outscore someone like Devin Duvernay. But the ownership discrepancy between him and Devin Duvernay is so much so that if you're playing in these massive field tournaments, if we get, 20% or something of flex ownership on someone like Gabriel Davis, but for the handful of plays that, Isaiah McKenzie goes out, he happens to score on one of those plays, you've kind of killed all of those lineups. You've made yourself a very unique lineup that can beat other ones. Like they're not just specifically beating Gabriel Davis lineups, they're beating most of the lineups. And you've done it with great salary relief. Like another perfect example was James Washington, like doesn't get a ton of targets when he's on the field. He's like probably just a decoy, unlike Chase Claypool, who's like, this grown man who should be getting targets all the time. But he happens to take the field on one of like the only play of the game, what was last week or whatever, where they had a wide open flanker receiver who happened to be, in position to score a touchdown. If that was Chase Claypool, he probably would have done the same thing and scored that long touchdown. It's just the variance that's inherent with, these like deep role players. So Mckenzie, I think for most people listening, probably doesn't end up being on the radar. If you're playing something like the Millie Maker, if you're throwing multiple lineups into it, I think at that point, yeah, he does make a little bit of sense because you do have to get different. Like I say he'd be my 50th or 60th lineup, but that's also in the context of like if I'm building a lot of good lineups ahead of it. Like if you're only playing a few, it makes sense to shuffle up like the randomness between your first and 30th best lineup or whatever. So I get why if you have just three, it's called 3 bullets in the Millie, maybe he's in your third one because you really do need to like stress just how like unique and weird you have to get when building a lineup that is facing hundreds of thousands of opponents.
All right. Let's see. Dawson Knox, tight end for Buffalo, found the end zone for the second week in a row. Lee Smith, the only other tight end to have snaps over the last 3 weeks. He's averaging about 18 per game, but he has just 2 targets in that time. And then finally, defense special teams. So the Steelers have allowed a league low 10 sacks in their last 12 games. Buffalo's just outside of the top 10 themselves, getting 2.5 per game. The Bills are 6th in the league with 1.6 takeaways, but Pittsburgh is allowing the 4th fewest. I do point that out because the last couple of years of his career, Ben Roethlisberger has been taking a lot less sacks. He's before, just because he was, such a giant guy, he would just stand there and people would bounce off him and whatever. Not quite doing that as much. He's willing to throw the ball away a little bit more than he has been previously, just because he keeps taking a pounding because he's not that mobile. But that just makes it harder for the defense to get anything. All right, so we have gone through everything. I wanted to make sure we had a lot of time for questions today. That is something that everybody has requested. So we're going to have about 20 minutes here. We got 23 minutes until lock. So we will work through these. I've got my lineups almost uploaded here. So we'll do that. I'll drop some head-to-heads here in just a second as soon as I upload this other file. But we've got, let's do the rankings. So tell me yay or nay. So Alan, and this is, then we'll get into some questions. We'll talk about the 5-1s, 2-4s, and some construction strategy. So I'm saying Allen, number 1, Roethlisberger, number 2. Mostly it's because I think he's going to throw close to 50 times. Deontay Johnson, 3. Stephon Diggs, 4. But he's going to be the focus of the Pittsburgh defense. So he may not make my team if I'm trying to get those other 3 guys in because I'm going to need the savings. I went Cole Beasley, 5. He's $2,400 cheaper than Diggs on DraftKings. He is $4,000 cheaper on FanDuel. I think that's important. And then I get to Gabe Davis, Eric Ebron, Juju, the kickers, and then James Conner. By the way, James Conner has not topped 15 fantasy points since week 6. Not very exciting. That's kind of my top 10. My next 3, Claypool, the Buffalo running backs, and the Pittsburgh defense. So that's kind of that's my player pool. And then I've got the Dawson Knox, James Washington, Benny Snell, Isaiah McKenzie, ad hoc crew. It's really top heavy tonight, but it's a deep top heavy. How are you looking at this? Let's talk the 3-mans, because I'm gonna go drop mine over there in on DraftKings. Username Emac. I'll put in a bunch of head-to-heads here in the $1 level that you guys can have some fun with. What do you want to do here with, if you're building a 3-max lineup, who would be your key guy, or not a 3-man? Sorry, yeah, not a 3-max, 3-man.
Yeah, if you're just competing against a handful of opponents, it's absolutely Josh Allen at captain. I don't, like you said, I don't think at that point you've secured probably all of the Stephon Diggs stats. You're not maximizing his stats, but you've secured them unless he somehow gets like Cole Beasley can throw a touchdown once every few years. But for the most part, you've kind of tapped into Stephon Diggs, so you don't really need to like prioritize playing him. And maybe he does go out and struggle because of the Pittsburgh defense. So I think I agree. It would be Allen, Roethlisberger. I think probably even like Johnson over Diggs at that point still, but both of those guys I think make just about as much sense. And then after that, I think Claypool kind of falls a little low just because of his role. Cole Beasley I think makes sense at 5. Trying to think of what else we would even be looking at this point. We probably need some value. Gabriel Davis comes to mind as a guy who could be some value. The Bills are attempting the like 4th or 5th most field goal attempts per game. Tyler Bass, a little interesting as a good value play. Probably need to think about him in like a game environment where we hit the under specifically. Maybe he makes sense with like the running backs there because he just doesn't have access to touchdowns. So yeah, I would say 2 quarterbacks, then the top 2 receivers, then the 2 Bills value receivers, Cole Beasley, then Gabriel Davis. Then it gets kind of messy. It's like, kickers. It's I don't know. Tyler Kroft is too expensive. I kind of think he's an interesting tournament play.
All right. Cold, no real wind to worry about, it looks like. Let's see. Kyle Dvorchak at captain, Drop Roses says. Thurman Thomas at captain. All right. Singletary or Davis? We talked about that, but that's going to be a decision point again that's worth revisiting for the people. I've set a rule that I'm not going to play both of them in the same lineup. I'm still slightly leaning towards Singletary, but it was Moss that really had the slightest of edges in the workload coming in the 5 games prior to him fumbling early on last Monday night when he got benched.
Yeah, I think, just in terms of who I think scores more points, I would say Devin Singletary, although I'd imagine like his ownership comes in that, it recognizes that. I think Gabriel Davis is a really interesting leverage off of like you can fade one of the Buffalo receivers and still play Josh Allen and play Gabriel Davis instead. Over the past 2 weeks, he has almost like all 3 of them have almost identical like air yard share numbers. They go to Gabriel Davis far less often than both of Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley, but when they do, they're very high leverage opportunities. It's interesting. I'm not, in love with it, but I do think he's a good leverage play. If we're just talking about like median projection though. He is his team's number 3 receiver, whereas it seems like Devin Singletary is his team's number 1 running back tentatively. So I'll still take number 1 running back just in terms of which one I think scores more points.
See here. Ooh, I always hate when I somehow collapse the ribbon in Excel and then I can't find all my favorite little shortcuts here. A little bit of a heart attack there. Are you feeling the love for perhaps a Steelers onslaught tonight or a Bills onslaught? AKA the 5-1s, the 4-2s.
I think both propositions are pretty interesting, especially when you consider that I don't even think you have to play like, Ben Roethlisberger captain, jam in as many receivers and a kicker. I think you can do things like playing, Zach Moss or Devin Singletary. I've given a lean to Singletary, but I think you can play Singletary with Allen because in the scenario in which for whatever reason Pittsburgh just cannot sustain drives, whether it be turnovers, whether it just be incompletions, like their receivers each of them dropping multiple balls, which has happened. I know both Eric Ebron and I believe Deontay Johnson are in back-to-back games with multiple drops. Like for whatever reason, if one team dominates time of possession, I think that's a really interesting way to say, well, they just run way more plays than their opponents, and you can play Devin Singletary with Josh Allen because no, he doesn't correlate on an individual play, but on the fact that they run twice as many plays as Pittsburgh, for whatever reason that may occur, both of them benefit. And for that reason, they can, in some scenarios, have correlation. So I think this is a really interesting slate to go either direction. I don't have like the spread's not like monstrous one way or the other. When you adjust for like being home field advantage, I don't think either team is that much better than either other team. I do think though that if just for whatever weird series of events, Josh Allen does he still does dumb things. Like I think he had another like hilarious lateral in like week 3 or 4. He still has games where he turns the ball over more than he scores. If that's the case, you could have one individual player, say Cole Beasley, pay off his value just because they have to throw the ball enough when they do have the ball. And then a bunch of the Pittsburgh guys go off. Even like a James Conner would make sense just because they're controlling time of possession. So I think this is a slate where either side, I think it makes sense, not even just to target a passing attack or a running attack. When I think of targeting the running attack, I think like an ancillary receiver, running back, a captain, defense kicker, or something like that. I don't think you even have to do that. I think it's fine to go 5-1 on either side, probably still playing receivers, mostly a captain, and then just play one guy who can get volume on the other side. For the most part, it'll be receivers for me.
All right. I saw somebody was saying that there might be some overlay. I'm looking at this big contest on DK here. Can you specify again if it's the $11 1.5 million? Oh, yeah, that was what it is. 500,000 the first. So there's 19,000 spots left. There's still 15 minutes to go. That one's gonna not. It won't be rake free by any stretch. It'll probably get up to 150, 157 would be my guess, because there'll be people jumping in on that one. Just looking, nothing overly crazy on FanDuel either. Let's see here. Asking about Connor. Is he due? Should he have a good game? What's your approach here for Connor specifically?
For the most part, I don't think there's such thing as due, although I do think there's like regression. If you get the ball, if your team tries to get you the ball a lot and you don't score, one of two things is going to happen. They'll stop giving you the ball, or you'll start scoring. So I guess you could call that being due. Like, the air yards by low model, or like expected points if you're underperforming. I'll still buy into those things. I don't know if I'd call it due. And I don't project him to have like a ton of I don't project him to have this great volume laden role, because we know Pittsburgh loves passing the football. So no, I don't think he's due. I still think he's in play, but he's certainly less desirable than Deontay Johnson, Stephon Diggs, than Cole Beasley. I even think he's less desirable than like Gabriel Davis when adjusting for their price. Playing the quarterbacks over him as well, obviously. And like I said, I think I even like Devin Singletary a little bit more given his price.
Deontay Johnson or Diggs head to head?
I mean, if you have the salary, play Diggs. If you don't have the salary, if you literally don't have the salary, you can't play him. But if it's a decision of waiting salary, I don't have a strong preference. I guess I'd go Deontay Johnson. I just think he'll be, especially in like large field tournaments, a bit more contrarian than Diggs. But I really like both. Those are the two captains I'm prioritizing. So if you have the salary, go with Diggs.
Would you consider playing neither quarterback in a lineup?
I would not. I'm not playing contests large enough for me to think that is worth chasing, because in I think it was like the FanDuel Millie, which people were like, oh, why were you playing multiple receivers with no Cam Newton? And that was like the winning lineup, and then it was the third best lineup, and then it was like the fourth best lineup as well, because all of the receivers scored. It was Jacoby Myers, Damiere Byrd, and whoever else, N'Keal Harry, all scored between like 5 and 8 points or something. So really, it was just like, did you pick the right ones? They all appeared to be close to the perfect lineup. Why would you play those guys without their quarterback? Well, because there's the off chance that their quarterback only throws for 150 yards, but those yards happen to concentrate on 2 or 3 players, and they catch the ball enough. Even on FanDuel, catches are worth something. There's a chance it happens, and if no one plays it, which the lineup in a contest with multiple 100,000s that won was duped, I think 11 times. At that ownership, sure, anything can happen, and it's going to happen if you project it this way at a higher rate than the field seems to believe it will happen. It's possible that playing no quarterback is like that on this slate. I actually don't think it even is, though. I think even the level of contrarian and non-duplicated it gets you is probably not worth it. And I'm not it's only for the milling maker, or if they're a contest close to in size. I know the $3.20 max and the 50-cent 150 max generally are very, very large as well. In those kinds of contests, I think it's preferred to get very weird, very contrarian with your builds, as long as it has some potential to hit. Essentially, I really don't see the potential for no quarterbacks to hit. At least it wouldn't be in my top 150 lineups probably.
All right, we got 12 minutes left. Got about 1,300 people watching. Please do hit that like button. That definitely helps us out. Also, please subscribe if you have not yet. We're about to clear, I think it was 44,000 or 45,000. We're approaching a milestone. We're still marching towards that 50,000 by the end of the year. We're giving it the old Awesemo try here. Hopefully we'll get there, but it definitely helps us out. Plus it helps you out once you subscribe, that we appear more frequently on your homepage. You can also look to the left if you've got your computer screen up, and it'll give you a little red dot next to the Awesemo channel if we are live. And even better, if you hit that notification bell, it'll send you a little alert each time we go live, because we go live a lot. Today we've had 5 hours of NFL shows, and we had an NBA show. That's pretty good. NBA right around the corner. We are in the midst of NBA preseason, and we are starting on December 22nd with the NBA regular season. The 22nd is a two-gamer. The next day, the majority of the league plays. They're taking Christmas Eve off, and then we, of course, have the 5 Christmas Day games. Use the promo code Caruso to get in for that first week of all NBA access for just $1. Use that now. You get through that first week of NBA, the 29th, and then you also get access now to preseason, and you get access to Slack. So definitely check that out because there's a lot of valuable resources and discussions that happen in the Slack channels here. All right, let's see here. Is there anyone under 800 that you can draft today?
I mean, in the largest contest, like I think there's always at least like some consideration.
I want to see Isaiah. Isaiah McKenzie's 1,800. That would be as low as I'd go, I think.
Yeah, I don't think you can really. I'll say Jalen Samuel. I guess you could. He's only 400, right? And on the off chance that James Conner gets hurt, like he probably catches a decent amount of passes. Like that's what they want to do. So why wouldn't he get on the field a little bit as a pass catcher? It's like a Millie Maker level strategy. I don't even think playing for I think at least the potential of an in-game injury is worth considering. Like when Jalen Samuel is going to be literally not owned by anyone, but figuratively speaking, he will be owned by no one. It's worth considering in a contest with hundreds of thousands of people. Other than that, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it in any single entry size contest, and even that, it wouldn't be one of my priority lineups. Outside of that, no, I don't think I have anyone else even worth considering, really.
Bass or Boswell? I think you said Bass is what you're leaning towards.
Yeah, I mean, Buffalo has attempted top 5 field goal attempts per game this year. They're projected to score more points, and they're at home. It just seems like, if one team is projected to score more points, it's more likely that they score just score more field goals. And they've kicked the ball a lot this year. So I think both are fine. But if it's just a 1v1, I'll take Bass.
Odds Connor gets hurt, -125 in the chat.
I wouldn't.
Not that we would ever wish injury upon someone, but that poor guy has just been dealing with a myriad of injuries.
Well, I was going to say he can't
Cancer,
test positive. I was going to say he can't test positive in the middle of the game. Like Des Bryant would say, you can get pretty dang close. Like I would, I'd bet oh no, he only got hurt once this year, and it was for less than a game. It was half a game. I would bet oh no, he's not going to get hurt, and then he would tweet out that he got COVID, and I'd lose that bet or whatever.
Oh, that's too funny. Let's see. Yeah, James Washington is 2,600. Mckenzie is 18. Yeah, there's no one I would go to. I'm sorry. I'm only playing people with a projection of at least 3 tonight. I'm going to hit my crunch. Fortunately, I got everything built out. I'm going to go under the field on Connor. That feels fine. I'm going under the field on every running back. I don't know
why. I just thought that sentence was going to end in everyone. You were just like, I'm going under the field on everyone. There's no good plays tonight. I was like, how does that work?
No, I was trailing because I was trying to decide how low can you go? Limbo lower now. I would prefer rolling the dice with James Washington and Isaiah McKenzie over with that extra ownership there.
If you reserve contests and then didn't set lineups, that's how you go under the field on everyone.
I see what you did there.
It's possible.
All right. Josh Allen, 25%. You want to go above or below that?
At captain, I'd go below it because I'm allocating so much of my captain ownership to the receivers.
Diggs, I think we go under the field.
Ooh, so what are you doing with Allen? Are you going above the field on Allen?
I'm going below. He's in my main lineup, but I'm going a little bit below. I'm setting it at 20. I
assume then you're just playing a lot of Steelers tonight?
Yes.
I can get on board with that. I think I'm going to be above the field on Diggs.
Cole Beasley as well.
That's right. But I'm going to be above the field on Diggs, but I do think one sort of overall portfolio of lineups to build that would make sense to fade Diggs is where you just fade the Bills, because the Bills are going to be immensely popular. They're going to have the most popular player at captain. They're probably going to have I would imagine the third most popular player at captain. Yeah. First and third most popular, and then fourth or fifth or so with Cole Beasley. So if you just think Pittsburgh comes in and upsets and puts up more points, I get why you would fade all of the Bills.
All right, see where we're coming out. I'm below on defense, both defenses. The
Yeah.
kickers, I'm well above on both. That's a product of being below on the defenses. Eric Ebron, surprisingly, I'm below the field at 5%. I would have thought I'd have more. I may have to rectify that. Stephon Diggs coming in a little above the field. I'm now going to nerf that, borrowing a word from Josh Engelman, so that does not occur for any other lineups I'm building here with my mixes. Running backs, I have total of 33% of my lineups have running backs in them. That seems pretty aggressive. All right, let's crunch out another 35, download, and we are ready to go. Is Boswell kicking tonight? Yes, he is. There's another guy active in there, but there's another guy in the player pool for Pittsburgh. I just clicked off it. I don't remember his name, but he is not handling field goals tonight. Do a little mixing.
I wonder if that's an edge, because I literally did pull up DK earlier, and I was like, why are there two kickers? I didn't know they had
the other
two.
guy's right next to him, and he doesn't have like a little. I have thought was this, and I didn't dig into it. Probably should have. Does one of them handle kickoffs or something? You know, every now and then someone will be hurt or something, and they'll be like, "All right, well, you still are good enough for this, but you're not good enough for kickoffs anymore."
It might have been the Boswell. I think was inactive last week. He was hurt last week, so they probably just kept whatever previous kicker was for them that game in the player pool for this game in case he didn't play or whatever. I wonder if there's a small advantage in playing Boswell though, because like people don't know, like I didn't. I like a few hours ago, or like whenever I was writing my Showdown content, I was like, why do they have two kickers in the player pool? They're going to be two kickers, and I had like Google if Boswell is playing. So maybe if people are setting lineups and not knowing the answer to that question, they're not playing them. We get lowered ownership on Boswell, and he goes out and boots 4.
All right. Oh, I see everybody grabbed all of my head-to-heads. Thank you. That'll be fun. You guys can come make fun of me on Twitter or Slack if you are a member of Awesemo. With that, let me just sort these lineups, and I'm going to upload. Is anyone terrifying you that you will not have them tonight? That age-old question.
Yeah, not particularly. I guess Cole Beasley is a person I've just chosen to play a lot of Gabriel Davis over him. I actually think Cole Beasley is even just like a fine play, just the finite amount of lineups I get to go with. I think you get a decent amount of leverage by playing Gabriel Davis instead of Beasley. Because I think at their salary, both are like, we had them points per dollar wise projected almost perfectly with each other. Like it was just two of them, or both of these guys are very good values at their price. I think we're going to get lowered ownership on Gabriel Davis. So, I'm fading Cole Beasley just based on I think there is a really good alternative to Cole Beasley in terms of how well he projects, and then facing that off against his ownership, which isn't going to be as high as Beasley. So I I don't think it's like fading Tyreek Hill feels a lot scarier than fading Cole Beasley. But if there's a player on the slate that was going to break me, it will be Cole Beasley. And he certainly has a 100-yard and a touchdown upside.
I see it. Melissa says we are 4-2-1. No, Melissa, you are leading 4-2-1. I think is the better way of saying it. If they win, we'll have send diet soda my way. I'm not stopping drinking diet soda, but I am allowing myself only one 12-pack a week now. That used to last me 2 days. So you won't be seeing me drink diet soda on the shows anymore, unless it's a morning show, because I don't drink coffee. So I usually am reserving that caffeine for the morning. Last week I said I was going to do it, and I made it through Sunday's show, and I had my last soda on air, and then I had to go 4 days until it was time to go to the store again. So there we go. No sodas. Well, very few sodas for me. I have my yummy water and my delicious Oreo Blizzard that I finished before we went on there. All right, Mckenzie or Snell as we're winding down here. 2 minutes left. I'm going to say Mckenzie. I'll put that one in chat.
Yeah, I think the only way that Snell really works, I mean, he could steal a touchdown, but I think Mckenzie is more likely to get a random touchdown than Snell is to get used on the goal line, which he did steal the last time I believe James Conner played. They did bring in Snell on a goal line play, but I think it was more that they had just used James Conner on the whole drive and giving him a breather. Like, I don't think they view him as their goal line back or anything. So I just think you're shooting for a touchdown with both of those guys, or the small James Conner injury chance. I think your touchdown probability is better with Mckenzie.
Let's see. Someone said I'm using Washington as my captain. I want to see if I had any captain Washington. I did have one Mckenzie and one Washington as captain. I've got one Ebron, one Tyler Bass, one Gabriel Davis, and then everything else is Allen Diggs, Roethlisberger, Beasley, Deontay Johnson, and a couple of Juju Smith-Schuster. So I'm doing some fun things tonight, playing in a lot of those booster contests. I like those better from a game selection standpoint. You can go kind of crazy with these. Hooked me up with MMA yesterday nicely. I had the right lineups in those and had a nice little night on MMA. That was a lot of fun. Shout out to Jason Floyd and Pete the Heat Rogers there. By the time you guys hear this, we will be at lock. So I do want to remind you that we are sponsored by No House Advantage. If you guys have not yet signed up over there, use the promo code Awesemo when you put in your first deposit, and they will match you up to $20. With that, refer a friend, get another $5 when they put their first deposit in. That's No House Advantage. Play against your friends, not the house. I'm just checking out the old one-stop shop tomorrow. Starting at 11, we have Lofty, Josh, and Adam for the NFL Strategy Show. We've got Jason and Jeff are doing the PGA First Look Show. That would be Jason Rosland. We then have, I think, there's Monday Night Football. I got to go write an article, and then me and you are going to be on air, and there's going to be live before lock. That'll be, I believe, Adam and Josh will be on that one. If Josh is still on vacation, I'm sure the boss man will come in, or maybe it'll be my favorite, Nerd Ask Greg. I have to say that he's my favorite or that he's Nerd Ask Greg. You can decide. But there we are. And then we are now 8 days away from NBA regular season. It's going to be a good one. Any final thoughts? Oh, we didn't say who were you terrified of. Who terrifies you tonight of not having?
No, I said it was Cole Beasley. I said just
Cole
because
Beasley.
I'm fading. Yeah, he's the guy I'm fading. Like I don't think
Right.
he has crazy potential. Like you don't think of Cole Beasley as like I said, doesn't feel like Tyreek Hill, but he has 100-yard and touchdown potential. And I'm not playing him, so if he does that, I will be losing.
There we go. And no pizza tonight. I had early dinner. It was salad and a very nice pork loin. That was left over from the other night. So there we are. So I'm going to go write an article, do an NBA draft, make my picks for the Australian League, and we're going to get on out of here. But you can follow Kyle on Twitter at Kyle Tweets Here. You can follow me at Emac DFS. And of course, it is Awesemo_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.